So can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm Freddie Gillespie, the chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission. And my dog Harley just broke through the barricades I had for him. So if he starts to bark, just bear with me. The other members of my commission are Karen Savicevich, who's with us tonight, and Sarah Rossitano. And we're an official commission of the town of Southborough, and our charge is to facilitate the preservation of open space. And one of the things, this book, it should be required reading for everyone. It's called Bringing Nature Home by Doug Tallamy. And he kind of changed our whole perspective, that he woke us up to the fact that our yards are part of the whole open space connection. It's not just protected land, protected conservation land. It is what we do in our own yards matter. So if you can get a hold of this book, he has a newer one out, which is Nature's Best Hope. Either one are great, both are better, and watching any of his videos or webinars are wonderful, and we'll provide links to those for you later. So the next thing the Open Space Preservation Commission did based on his book and the work we're trying to do is we signed up for this, trying to create the whole town be certified as a wildlife habitat community. And that means everyone certifies their yards, all the events we do, you have to earn points to get certified. And we started this and we had a grand kickoff last year at Earth Day to celebrate the 50th anniversary. And COVID brought that all to a screeching halt, and we hope to be doing more, and you'll be hearing more about it hopefully this spring. We partner with the Southborough Conservation Commission and the Southborough Open Land Foundation. So you might start seeing these signs going up around town. The other thing I want to talk about is that, well, what does this have to do with winter sow? Well, the reason we're doing winter sow is based on all of this previous work of the commission and other groups in town. This will be going into our 7th year. We ran Dr. Robert Jagier, we invited him to Breakneck Hill to see how we were doing. We've been working on pollinator habitat for a decade or so. When he showed up, we had some rare bumblebees there, and he adopted the property as one of his research sites, or his first research site, because he found the endangered, well, it's not endangered, it's at risk, bumblebee, Bombus fervidus. And this is a species that's declining and, you know, headed towards extinction. And we've been working really hard. The stewardship committee that has oversight of Breakneck Hill has been working really hard to manage differently and bring better plants in. And one of the things his research showed is that when he first got here, we were only finding this rare at-risk species on non-native plants, and they're not the preferred plant for this bumblebee. So we've been adding more of the native plants it needs based on his research, which was done at Breakneck Hill. So Southborough has played a major role in helping to preserve biodiversity, not just in the state, but regionally and maybe nationally. So his, that's the same bee on non-native clover. His research has given him a list of plants that we are now using. And when we started planting those plants at Breakneck Hill, we now have a much more robust population of the bee, as well as now we're incorporating his research into other properties on town. The golf course is going to have a garden. We're going to be using these plants at the library, and our newest partnership with the Southborough Open Land Foundation at the Beals Preserve. And he also has a science-based project that I hope many of the people here and their families will want to engage in. So one of the other things that happened is in 2017, a group formed the Native Plant Gardens of Southborough. It's a Facebook group. We participate in Heritage Day. We march in the parade. Everyone can get involved, and we have a lot of fun. And it's thanks to them that this event is happening, because the Open Space Preservation Commission could not have done this work that it took to host this on our own. We have had specifically, there were many people that helped out, but specifically Beth Foley, Joyce Greenleaf, Jenny Pete, Emily Van Nort, Catherine Korlstoff, and Carol, I have her last name wrong. Yazoo. Sorry, there's no F there. I think that came from Catherine's name. Anyhow, we worked really hard collecting seeds, cleaning them. It's much easier when we did it last fall at a workshop at the library, but we didn't want to let a year go and not do it because of COVID. So here we are. And we packaging up over 500 seed packets to give out to close to 80 people. That's a pretty amazing endeavor we've been able to accomplish here. So I want to show you, last year we had a seed workshop at the library. It started with, we did some seed collection at Breakneck Hill, then we had one night where we all did seed cleaning, and then we all did planting together, what we're going to go over tonight. Nikki was there helping us. And one of the members was Martha, and this is a post on Facebook. And it's so amazing. This is, if you can read a little bit of, this is a screenshot. Swamp milkweed from the seed cleaning project at the library last fall. Just put them in the garden about 1 week ago. And then she asked a question, should I separate or keep them together? And people weighed in. That's the benefit of the Facebook group. We're building community. Martha's a pretty amazing story. I don't know if she's in the room, but I want to say one of the things we have done is had native plant garden tours, and she came on one. And the next post on Facebook was, well, I went home and I'm going to rip these shrubs out and put some garden plants in. This is what can happen when you start to learn, why we do the native plants. And that will be another presentation. And I know we want to get to the workshop, but so here's her milkweed. And here she is, my first flower Friday with a bonus. This is just a youngster from our winter sow project at the library. So she sowed seeds last year. She put the plants in. She got a flower, and she got the monarch butterfly, which we call the gateway pollinator, gateway drug to pollinators. And then she said, I believe this is a monarch caterpillar found this morning on one of my winter sow milkweeds. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm still a newbie here. And I'm like, you're such a pro. You collected seeds. You planted them in the winter, put them in a jug, got a plant, planted it, got flowers, got a monarch on it who laid her eggs, and now you have a monarch caterpillar. This is a huge success story, and one I hope you'll all be joining us on. And these are some plants that are seeds that many of you have. And I want to point out I don't know if you can see this. This is the great blue lobelia. And that was one Nikki grew from the winter sow at the library last year. So these are all success stories, and we're all going to move forward tonight and learn how to plant your own winter sow seeds and have this kind of garden next year. And thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Emily Van Nort, who's one of our great volunteers. Yeah, let me stop sharing, but let me just say, Nikki Howell, she's the owner of Fattoria. She has a degree in sustainable agriculture. She's an educator. She teaches organic gardening and now native winter sow, and provides garden consultation services. And she's also a lover of nature. So I'm going to turn it over to Nikki. I'll stop share. And
all right. Freddie gave you a brief introduction about me. And I want to thank Freddie because I went to Dr. Regere's workshop at the library and learned so much about the native pollinators. And Freddie spoke about the native plants. I did study sustainable agriculture and worked on organic farms, and it was always an important thing to have wild spaces on farms. And I learned that, but I had never learned that what the plants are matter, which seems really silly, but that never was something that I was taught until I recently learned that just a few years ago. So I continue to learn, and I love the Facebook group. I've learned so much from that. And so that's why I was really excited to share this method that I use for starting plants in my own yard for the native plants, because I found that it lent itself very well to them. So.
Hey, Nikki?
Yep.
Can you hear me, Nikki?
I can hear you.
We also, before you really went into it a lot, I think we wanted to ask Leonardo, who's sitting here. I see him up there. Everybody, Leonardo is a great asset to us. He has been a wonderful volunteer. It was when we first started this, and I didn't mention this, if you're not already, please join the Southborough Native Plant Gardens Facebook group. And it was like, do we let people who aren't from Southborough in? Because we're really trying to build community here. And we decided, sure, why not? The more that know about this, the better. And Leonardo was from out of town in Worcester, and he is one of the most prolific and generous native plant grower and garden maker. And he's donated many plants to us. And he's just going to go briefly over the list, right, Leonardo? Any seeds that people should be aware of that need a little something extra. Now, I want to tell everyone, this winter sow technique is sort of like, I don't know, gardening, winter native plants for dummies. It works. It's pretty easy. So if you have one of these seeds Leonardo talks about, you don't have to get too fussy. You know, you can do what he says, but you can also try and just not have as great a germination rate. But we do want you to know about it. And afterwards, I will also send out resources for you to dig in deep for those that want that. But a lot of us just want to throw the seeds in and throw the buckets outside and get flowers, and that works pretty well too. So Leonardo?
Hi, everybody. So there's just very few plants on the list that need special treatment. So first of them, the yellow wild indigo, the Baptisia tinctoria. It's a large seed and it has a very thick coat and it's waxy. So it needs to be mechanically scarred. So if you have a piece of sandpaper, you can run the seeds for a couple seconds in between the sandpaper. Or if you have a nail file, you can also run the seeds on a nail file. What that does, it kind of breaks down the coat on the skin, so it's easier for the water to penetrate the seed and it can swell and germinate. And then there are two other species on the second page, the spotted St. John's wort and the blue lobelia. Those, they have very tiny seeds and they need light to germinate. So you can just surface sow, you don't really have to cover it. You actually should not cover it. And those are the only ones that need special treatment.
Thank you, Leonardo. So everyone, if you have either of those two seeds, don't plant them first and think about this, you know, see if you can scrape up that the Baptisia and don't get any dirt on top of the St. John's wort, right? And now turn it back to Nikki.
All right, super. So people can't see my face, but at least you can see my hands. So hopefully I'll be able to guide you this way. So the very first thing, I don't know if anybody's doing this live with me, so I'm just going to run through what we're going to use in case you want to scramble through the house and make sure you have it all handy. We're going to need a milk jug. We're going to need some type of cutting instrument, whether it's a drill or a box cutter, a scissor. You can even use, to make holes, you can even use a glue gun, which I'll show as well. We'll need some duct tape. We'll need potting soil, and a marking pen and labels. So that should get us started. And water, a watering jug, or you can bring it to your sink and use the spray nozzle. So, all right, so the very first thing, when you have your jugs, when you're saving your jugs, take those caps and throw them in the recycling bin. You do not need them. You don't want to hesitate and put them on. It defeats the whole purpose. We want to have snow and water going into this hole through the season, through the winter, through the spring. So that's going to be the hole for moisture to escape and moisture to go in. So the first thing we have to think about is drainage, because we're going to have that moisture going into this hole. We want to have moisture coming out. So actually, let me backtrack for a second, because I didn't really explain what the whole purpose of the jug is, I guess. I'm under the assumption that everybody understands what we're doing here, but what we're going to do is we're going to use a milk jug to act as like a little mini nursery for our plants. So we're going to cut these open and we're going to create a mini nursery for the seeds that you have. And what this actually does is not only does it make a nice little microclimate for the plants, and it mimics nature because it's going out in the snow and it's going to be outside in that climate, just like your plants would be if the seeds fell off onto the ground. But what it does by being in the jug is it actually protects those seeds from being eaten by insects or birds or other predators, chipmunks, squirrels, things like that. It also will protect your seedlings when they're really small from those same possible threats. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is make those drainage holes in the bottom. So one of the ways that we can do that is with a drill. I have already put a few in here. Pretty simple. So we have the drill as an option. I'm going to give you a few options because this shouldn't be something that you have to like go buy tools for. The point is to use what you have. You can use a box cutter. When I use a box cutter, I push it straight in and I give it a little bit of a twist. So it sort of opens that up. You can see it opened it up a little bit and you can put a whole bunch of those in there. And I used to use the box cutter all the time, but I finally got to the point because I hold the jug between my knees when I did this. And I just felt like I was pushing my luck that sooner or later I was just going to stab myself in the thigh. So I did stop using the box cutter and move to the drill, but it does work really well. So the other thing that people use, I'm gonna grab it here, is a glue gun, because maybe you don't have a drill or a box cutter. Maybe you're a crafter. So you have this and it goes right through if you have a nice hot glue gun and makes a hole. So you can see you have lots of options. So you want to make, I usually make probably 10 or so holes on the bottom. Some people put drainage holes along the sides. I've never done that and I've had fantastic luck without doing that. So it's up to you. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut this open so that we can plant inside of it. I always use this right under the jug's handle as my point. You need to have the soil be 3 to 4 inches when you plant in here. So you need to make it high enough that you have room to do that. If you cut too low, you don't have enough room for your soil. And if you don't have enough soil in here, then your roots are going to dry out really quickly. So you want to have nice, healthy root system. And I found that with this method, you get a really robust root system on the plants. So I usually start, like I said, here's the jug's handle. I usually start here, and I do use my box cutter for this, or you can just cut into it with a box cutter or a scissor, and you can cut around. And then I always stop at the label, and then I go back the other way. And again, I stop at the label so that this makes a hinge. And the reason that I do that is because eventually in the spring, we're going to open these up. And we don't want this blowing away. We want to be able to easily cover them back up if there's going to be a cool night. And if these are blowing away all through your garden, they're now litter and they're difficult to find to reattach. Because you simply have to tuck it in next time. What we're going to do when we're done is we're going to duct tape it. I am going to ask if there's any questions at this point. You can put them in the chat, or I don't know if people can be unmuted. I'm not sure how it's going.
People can unmute themselves.
Nikki?
Yes.
Nikki, This is
Yes.
just about what you've presented now, so everyone shall know. We're going to pause at different spots of her demonstration. So if you have specific questions to what she just did, like how she got the holes in the bottom, don't use a knife and stab it, like some of us do when we're angry, because then you can maybe miss and cut yourself. But not saying I've ever done that, though.
It's a little COVID release, Freddie. We just stab the jugs. I'm moderating the chat. The chat doesn't seem to be open for everybody, but I'm seeing the questions. So if you do post a question based on our segments, I can then either respond to them or pose them to Nikki. So if something comes up as she's talking, your comment won't go unnoticed.
So no questions this far, Emily?
Not in the chat.
Okay.
Doug,
Or
I have
you
a question.
can
So
raise your
with
hand and you can be unmuted as
So
well.
with your diameter of so when you do the drill, my question for drainage for me,
Sure.
the diameter of the drill bit doesn't really matter. It's just having the drainage. How do you I don't know, how do you know how much is too much drainage to hold water in your soil versus like letting it all flow out? Like, how do we judge between like stabbing with a box cutter, which is my usual way, or a drill bit so that I don't lose all of my water? Is there some balance?
So honestly, I've done it over the years. I've done it all the ways I just showed you. And I usually end up with about 10 or so of whatever type of holes I've made, and I've never had an issue with any of them. So I think it's not something you have to really overthink too much. I think that you're going to set this jug on the ground, so you're going to have water running out of it, but I don't think you're going to lose too much because again, it's sitting up against the surface of the ground.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Anybody else have any questions for the first segment? You can unmute yourselves, I think.
All right. If not, then I will move forward. And if you think one, you can put it in
Nikki
the
has a
chat.
question. Hang on.
Oh, okay.
Gary has a question.
Yeah, we're not able to type in the Q&A for some reason, but the question was, Leonardo went kind of quick and I didn't have my pencil ready. Can you put in the chat those two special seeds to watch out for?
It was what? It was yellow baptisma, right?
Yep, that one needs to be stratified. And then the great blue lobelia and the spotted St. John's wort are really tiny and they'll sit on the surface without cover.
Thank you.
All right, so our next section, we're going to talk about the soil we're going to use. And we want to use potting soil, not seed starting soil. Is somebody asking a question? No? Okay.
I think that was feedback from some.
Okay. So we want to use potting soil, not seed starting soil. That's important because the seed starting soil can sometimes dry out really easily. Even though we are starting seeds, it's different than what they're doing in a greenhouse with starting seeds or in little trays. Also, I know Freddie had put this information on the Facebook page, and I wanted to just reiterate because I just learned more about this as well. We have not been able to find a potting soil that does not contain peat. And peat is not sustainably harvested, I guess you could say, because although it does eventually renew itself, it takes thousands and thousands of years. So, ideally, we're doing these great things for nature, so you don't want to be doing other things that harm nature. So what we've looked into is finding sort of some low peat types of mixtures, and coast of Maine potting soil. You can find at Russell's Garden Center in Wayland. You can find it also at Bigelow Nurseries in Northborough, is one that we found to contain lower amounts of peat. And perhaps in the future, we'll have a workshop on creating our own potting soils when we can have more information about that. So I just wanted to put in that little spiel about the potting soils because I just learned about it recently as well. So But if you have a bag of potting soil at home already, use it. So what we're gonna do is, as I said, we wanna have 3 to 4 inches of soil in here. So you can maybe not really see through my container to see how tall it is. You'll have to trust me. It's about 3 to 4 inches high. I would always err on the side of a little bit more soil than less. And the reason is, again, because as these plants grow, they're going to have a robust root system and you don't want them to dry out. I've not had the problem of them being waterlogged ever because you have a good drainage system. As long as you put those holes in the bottom. The holes are really key to this because if you don't, then you have basically an enclosed container that is filled with water and then rotting seeds. So the holes are really important. So next, I'm going to show some of the seeds. Let's see. So I have some of the hyssop here. So this was harvested from a plant that was in my yard. And so you can see this is just the seed heads here. Let me go to the bottom of the bag where all the little tiny seeds are. So hopefully here you guys can see that these are the seeds, how tiny they are. And these little pieces here are the actual parts where the seeds were in. And that's okay if those are in there. You're going to have some seeds that have fluff on them. You're going to have some seeds that might have some of the chaff in there. That's okay. It's just going to turn into organic matter in your soil. So what you're going to do is just sprinkle that right over the surface of your jug. And when we plant these eventually, you don't have to be so meticulous about, I'm going to place the seed here and I'm going to place the seed here. I'm going to place the seed here, unless you have those bigger seeds like that Baptisia, which is a little bit bigger, then you can place those a little more carefully and space them out in your jug. But with those really tiny seeds, you can just sprinkle them. In nature, they're going to fall from that plant and they're going to just fall in little tiny piles on the soil and they're going to grow like that. So it's okay. So as Leonardo had said, this is the hyssop. So I also have the other one. So with the hyssop, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this surface really lightly. So I have a handful of soil here. I'm just going to try to make it so you can see. And what I'm going to do is just rub my hands together so that I put like a little bit of cover over the plants. You're not going to smother them with an inch of soil. The seeds are super teeny tiny, so they don't need that. If you want, you can gently, you're not compacting the soil, you're just gently patting them in there. All right. So do I have any questions before I move forward? Are there any questions in the chat or from people in real time? I see Aphrodite raised her hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I can
hear you. My first question is, because I was away, I don't know if you said anything about that. What if the soil we have fertilizer?
I've had bags of potting soil that had fertilizer in them and I've used them and they've worked just fine.
Okay. And my second question, it is, do you water the soil before you put it inside or not? Because I was not, you water the soil before and after, like you use it, or it is?
So I don't water before, I actually water after. And I know some people do mix their potting soil with water in a bucket before they add it. And my soil isn't, it's pretty dry, but it's okay. Like it's gonna go outside and it's gonna sit outside and it's gonna have snow. It's gonna have lots of moisture coming in. The next step you're gonna see in the next steps, you're gonna see me water this because we will water it before it goes out. But I do not water the soil before I put it into the jug. No.
So we were also thinking about, in the way that we're framing this conversation, is last year we did this in the library, and it was very hard to water the soil before, like in the upstairs of the library. Are people doing it in their houses? We can't all get together outside or in a garage. So while you could water it potentially, it's a little bit less messy if you take your dry potting soil and then you water it afterwards, just based on our own homes and COVID and how we can do it. So that was one of the things that we were thinking about, of you can do it both ways, but it's a little less messy if you're doing it in your living room or your kitchen, or.
And it really, honestly, it's not necessary to pre-water the plants. As you saw, we did the workshop at the library and you saw some pictures from those jugs that came from that. I always do it in my house in the winter time because I don't have a garage or an outside space that's not snowy in the middle of, January, February when I do this. So I do it at my kitchen table like I'm doing right now, and I just water once I'm done. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so it looked like you just shook the soil in. You didn't pack it down at all before you put the seeds in, is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
Okay, I'm used to packing it down more, and then just slightly pack it down once the seeds are in.
Just gently, you just
Okay.
want, what I'm doing is just connecting basically the seeds to the soil very gently,
Okay,
so I'm just gently tamping it down. I'm not pressing it down.
okay, thanks.
You want to be able to have nice aeration in the soil. So if you're packing that soil down, you're compacting the soil and you're making it harder for those teeny tiny roots to go through the soil as they grow.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Anything in the chat, Em?
Any other questions? Nope.
All
I'm not
right.
sure the chat's really working as well. Yep.
Okay.
We can move on unless I'm, yeah.
All right. I want to mention one other thing. I'm just going to grab it here. I know people like to try using other materials to use as jugs. And so before I move on to the next step, I'm just going to say half-gallon milk jugs work fantastic as well, because you get that nice depth again. They're just as deep as a gallon milk jug. So you can cut and have a nice head space for your plants once they grow in a half-gallon milk jug. There's also clear juice jugs that we've used successfully. I have in the past used salad containers, and I have two thoughts on salad containers. A salad container with their lid on top, it's just not deep enough. You have enough depth here to put your soil in, but what ends up happening is you don't have enough headspace when it's time for your seedlings to grow, because you're going to leave these in here for a while protected. So that's the problem I have with these. What I have seen people do, and if this is all you can find, then I say give it a go. You can take two of these and you can put them together like this. So you now have the headspace that you would need. I've seen people attach them with duct tape. I've seen people do crazy things with zip ties. I think sometimes lots of us have lots of free time in the winter to think up lots of gardening projects for ourselves since we're inside. So people have gotten really creative. So if this is, the only thing you have access to, then utilize it. Just again, remember you need those drainage holes. That's really key. And you'll also need drainage holes or you'll need holes on the top so that you can have the moisture going in, since you don't have a hole in the top like you do a jug. What else did I want to say about that? A really good resource if you don't have milk jugs, if you know somebody who uses a CPAP machine, they use distilled water in those, and they use several a week generally. So that's a really good source. If you have a friend on a CPAP, you can get their distilled water jugs to use for this project as well. All right, so Our next step is labeling. So you really want to label these well. I label them twice. I label them on a stake that goes in, and then I label them on the jug. So this one right here is my hyssop. I'm going to stick that in.
Nikki, can you say what, I mean, we're not sponsored by this company, but what garden marker you do buy that
Yes,
doesn't look out?
I do want to mention that because this garden marker is like the best I've ever had. It's just called garden marker. I don't know if you can see it. It's green with sunshine on it. It says garden marker outdoor use.
I'm not a big Amazon purchaser, but it really is called garden marker on Amazon.
On Amazon, it is, yes. So if you can see that there, you can look for it. You can find it on Amazon. And honestly, it holds up way better than a Sharpie does. Sharpie does fade. These things do not fade. I don't know what the heck is in them, but they're magical. So
they're probably not eco-friendly or good for our planet. So we might need to find that for the next workshop.
Years and years.
Which, yeah, speaks to the toxicity. So yeah, maybe the next workshop, Freddie, will figure out what garden marker might be a good option.
The other thing that you can do if you're looking for a more eco-friendly option is using wooden popsicle sticks with pencil. Works really well. Or you can use a ballpoint pen because a ballpoint pen presses into the wood, and even if it fades, you can still see the indented words. So that's always an option too. So as I said, I label twice. I do it on the lid and then I do it on the inside. That way, if for whatever reason this top piece goes missing, you still have it labeled inside. All right, I'm going to put this as normally what I would do is I would bring this over to my kitchen sink and I would use the spray nozzle on a really gentle spray to water this. But for all our purposes here, I'm going to use a watering can. This is what we did at the Southborough Public Library with water jugs and cloths underneath. That was pretty great. So I'm just going to gently water. You want to be gentle because you don't want those seeds to just wash to the sides. You want them to stay where they were. That's why I gently tamp them down as well. You know, this doesn't have to be complicated. I think sometimes we tend to overthink things, and you don't need to overthink this. Give it a drink. Don't worry if it's too much. If it's too much, the water's going to drain out of your drainage holes. If you can see my mat, you can see that some of it's coming through. I can also look at the sides of my jug and I can see that they're damp all the way through. So that's good. That's a good drink. As I said, if it's too much, it drains through. If it's not enough, it's going outside. It's going to be receiving several inches of snow, probably in 2 days. So it'll be fine. All righty. Just think if there's anything else I wanted to.
The next part of was closing it.
Okay, yep, I'm looking for my, oh, here it is, sorry guys. All right, so the next part we're gonna do is we're gonna close this up, and I use duct tape to close these up.
I'm gonna insert myself to be the eco-friendly. That maybe we can find another alternative to duct tape for next year.
Yeah, right. So, trying to do this so you guys can see what I'm doing. All right, just going around the sides, around this cut.
And what's the purpose of, instead of just tucking it in, why do you have to seal it?
So when you tuck it in, it can blow off, and it likely will blow off. With some good winds that we would definitely have in the winter. And this just, when you seal it in too, you're going to contain that moisture, which is what we want in that early stage. So in the springtime, when this is starting to grow, you're gonna have a nice little microclimate for your little baby plants. Do we have any questions right now about where we're at in the stage? I will talk about what to do next, but up to this point, are there any questions?
This is Freddie, and I wanted to make a couple of comments that
Sure.
it's been very successful to, before you put the dirt in and everything, label it on the bottom, because the sun is the worst, fader of what's written, and often people will find it. And, if you only plant one jug, it's not a big deal, but some people there's pictures of people getting carried away with, I don't know, lots and lots of jugs, and I won't name anyone in this room here, but it can happen to the best of us, and it's a good thing, but you don't want to be looking in the spring and saying, what is this? So labeling it on the bottom inside is good, but on the bottom is another technique. And the other thing about not tucking it in, why I use the tape, one of the reasons we do this is also because you could get mice or little critters in there, and it's a lot easier for them to, open up a milk jug that's not taped than one that is taped. So that's another reason.
Janet, did you have a question?
I did. If we got one, I thought we were only supposed to order one type of seed. So if we got one packet of seeds, how many containers do we need?
One. And if you want more seeds, there's more of an opportunity to get more seeds. I think Freddie put it out there again to
Okay.
get more seeds.
So you still have some available if I get one?
Yes,
Okay.
I think we do. Freddie talked about, but like the seed packets, because we're not an official, they're all estimated seed packets. But for the most part, 1 to 2 jugs, in terms of if there's teeny tiny versus the bigger ones of the milkweeds, you can extend them maybe to 1 to 2, maybe 3 jugs. But Freddie did put out additional call for, if you want more seeds, we have more seeds, and then hopefully everybody grows lots of baby plants. We share baby plants in the spring.
That's good. Thank you.
So I can I'm trying to think. The link for the second workshop is on the Open Space Preservation Commission's website in the I think it's Pollination Preservation Workshop folder. So you go to the town website and you can sign up there. We have limited availability right now. I think we're down to 6 species left, but once we get all that out, we need to be making these plants pretty soon, because the point of winter sowing is they need so many weeks of cold freezing and thawing. So the current second round is open through Sunday. And then when we're done with that, we'll see what's left and see what sanity the volunteers have to do another round if needed. So, but sign up now, go to the town's website, Open Space Commission.
Any other questions before we move on to where to put them outside?
Hi, I have a quick question on Freddie's comment. Do we have a date for pickup on the second round of seeds yet?
No.
Okay.
No.
We have to sort them and, package them up. We're hoping sometime this weekend, and it will be a curbside pickup, not like what we did at the senior center. And anyone who's registered for seeds will get an email letting you know. And I'm hoping it will be maybe Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically, it's my driveway. It's going to be a bit at the bottom of by a mailbox where you'll have a paper bag with your name stapled to it. So not the same as what we did last Saturday. All right, Nikki, you ready for?
I am. I
Location?
thought of one other thing I just wanted to throw out there to people. These milk jugs that you've collected and you've prepared, you can use these for quite a few years. So at the end of the season, when you've planted out your seedlings, these jugs can be reused. If you just rinse them out, some people will use a really tiny amount of bleach in water and wash them out with that. You can do that. You don't necessarily have to. I use just, you know, hose and water, rinse them out. And if you have a place to store them, then it's great. You can put a piece of string through the handles and put them all together and hang them from a garage or something like that. And then you don't have to prepare them year after year. So I just wanted to throw that out there before I forgot. So our next step is putting these outside. I like to put them in I put mine under a big tree. And the reason that I do that is because in the spring, it's going to get lots of sun. And as the seedlings begin to develop, it's going to start to get that dappled light because those leaves are going to come onto the tree. And for me, that works well. That's what's worked well for me. You want to put them outside. You want them to be in a slightly protected spot. They can be next to a house. The only thing with that is you need to be very aware of if you have an overhang, because if you have an overhang, then there's no moisture going into your container. There might also be no sun, depending on which side of the house you're going to put this jug on. So, you know, like sort of an east, southeast facing is great. Again, don't overthink this. It's, you know, not meant to be that complicated. But just be aware, is there going to be a giant shadow over this? Is there going to be an overhang over this? What's that mean for my plants? So just think about that as you set these outside. And then you just leave it alone. You're welcome to like stick your eye over here and peek in all you want. But don't, I think, you know, people start seeing baby plants in there and they say like, oh my gosh, it's going to be super cold. I better bring these in the garage. Don't do that. Leave them outside. They can withstand a lot. Nature is intelligent. They'll know when it's time to emerge, and they will. We're not changing the microclimate so much on them as different as what happens in nature. You know, they're going to fall to the ground naturally. Seeds will fall to the ground. Maybe some leaf debris will fall over them. That's sort of what happens with us putting a thin coat of potting soil over them. When the conditions are correct, then they'll emerge. And that's what's going to happen in this jug. All we're doing is giving them a little extra protection, as we talked about. So,
they're hardy New Englanders. They're
hardy New Englanders, exactly. I'm like, they know what to do. So the next thing is when you're seeing your seedlings emerge and they've gotten to be, you know, like 2 inches high, you can start to open these jugs back up. Okay, and you're going to open them, and you can open them lightly. You can open them all the way. You know, let them get some natural sun. You don't want them to get sun scald, so you're not going to like open them up and stick them out in, you know, a hot sunny spot. You're going to leave them, you know, in a dapple lighted area, or you're going to leave your cover slightly open, because as it gets hotter, what's going to happen is now this is going to turn into a real warm microclimate for them, right? Because it is like a little greenhouse. So we don't want to cook our seedlings. So you need to be aware that they might need to get open slightly like this, and just be gently protected. If it's going to be really cold at night, you can go back out and just stick the tape over them loosely. I mean, your tape's not going to stick super well, but it's enough to protect them just like that. When your seedlings have reached probably like 4 to 6 inches and they seem like they have a nice root system on them, the way to transplant these out is a method called the hunk of seedlings. So you're not going to tease apart each teeny tiny seedling. Some people do, and then they repot them into bigger containers, but then you have to maintain those bigger containers, and you need to constantly water those. If you're going to put these, if you know where they're going and they're going right into the soil, you take a hunk out of here. This can be broken into probably 4 hunks of seedlings. So you're gonna just break it apart and you're gonna plant that seedling. You do need to keep monitoring these when the weather warms up, because we might have some really hot sunny days and they can dry out. So you need to check in on them and make sure they do have enough moisture. You don't want them to dry out. You don't want your plants to be wilted. That will, you know, decrease the likelihood that they're going to do much for you if they're, you know, suffering. So, trying to think.
So can we, Nikki, can we talk quickly about, like, sometimes you don't think your plants are going to grow. So we often, well, me, I look and I don't see anything, and I don't see anything, and I don't see anything. And then I text my friend being like, I failed at milk jug sowing. And sometimes the germination on these native plants takes much longer. Like, it's June and I'm finally getting little tiny seedlings. So they don't get to be 2 inches or 4 inches in their little tiny microclimate. So don't throw away your pots, I guess, is my, like,
right.
How do we know when to stop?
So there's going to be some differences between the plants that maybe you have 6 different jugs that you're doing, and you might have one that, you know, the seedlings are emerging super early in the spring, say March, April, you're starting to see green growth. But again, like Emily said, you might have some that aren't showing any signs of anything till June or July. You do need to be aware that these can still dry out, you know, if they're in there that long. So you need to be watering them. And at that point, I would have this open a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to cook the seeds, because it'll start to get really hot June, July in these if they're closed up.
So,
but
yeah,
don't give up on them. That's
personal
really
experience from last year's winter sow, because I'm not a seed person. I just like plants. I did have plants finally emerge in July, and I thought they were all gone, and I had killed them all, and I can't do seeds, and it's not my forte. And they finally, you know, we're happy in July. So it does take some time if you keep them watering them. So don't throw them away. But it does, I mean, I don't know, I haven't done this research on, maybe Leonardo can speak to this, but like the germination rate can vary between April to June, right? Like, how do we said to be patient, right, Nikki?
Yeah, just be patient. I mean, I can't speak to exactly when each plant variety is going to emerge for you. I'm not that knowledgeable yet about these native plants, but I'm learning just like everybody else here. So yeah.
Can I jump in?
Please.
This is Freddie again. Also be aware, if your friend of the same species has already, you know, growing in little seedlings and yours haven't broken the soil yet, doesn't mean yours aren't going to. There can be great differences between little tiny microclimates. Her house might be warmer, or you might be in the sun, and you just never know. So just keep taking care of them until it snows again. Just kidding, but you know, don't give up, because it's incredible how late some of these may come, and your seeds might be deeper or who knows what, but don't give up on them.
Thank you. Yes. Do we have any other questions from folks, either in the chat or you can unmute yourself?
I have another one.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Go.
go.
So when you said, you know, when we're at the point where you've opened them up because you've got little seedlings, and you said if it's going to get really cold, could you be more specific? It's like under 40, or is that freezing?
Generally, by the time that we would still have, you know, below freezing temperatures, these are probably still going to be closed up.
Well, you can get a frost overnight in May.
Yeah, if you're going to get a frost, you know what you can do? You can either, I mean, if you have a ton of these, it's kind of a pain to go out and close them. I go out, I take a sheet, and I just cover it with a sheet for the night.
Oh, that's a good idea. It's a really
super
good idea.
simple.
Okay. So under 40, you're talking about as being concerning.
Yeah, I would say under 40, I would toss something over them.
Okay.
Yeah, like those weird May, early June frosts is what you're worried about. These don't tend to like germinate, and they're not going to be 2 inches. They're not going to be that big before then. We had another question. Gary, go ahead.
I've got 2 questions. How many seeds come in a pack? Is it enough seeds for one container, or do we need to plan for a bunch of milk jugs for every seed that we ordered?
For each pack that you ordered, there should be enough seeds to do 1 jug, perhaps 2.
Okay.
We were a group of volunteers, so, and some seeds are very tiny. We are not an official organization that's counting seeds. So some packets may be more generous than others, but 1 to 2 is.
And when for that one, she spread a lot of seed. Should we expect like 50 little seedlings to come up, or how many?
So I'm learning some of the plants that produce a lot of seeds have a lower germination rate in the native ecosystems. So they might make a lot of seeds, but not really end up in the wild producing a lot of plants. So sometimes we find plants that have few seeds and they have a higher germination rate. So I'm not a scientist, but part of that is figuring out the over under of what to do. So if you have a lot of seeds, and you can overplant a little bit in these milk jugs and then do Nikki's chunk method. And then she did a quadrant of 4, but you could then make it, if you really had an amazing success rate, you could make those quadrants even smaller. You could do 12 or 16 to plant them into chunks in your garden based on your germination. I'm not a scientist in that, like I don't know the ratio, but there's some of these seeds are very tiny, and I think part of that is that they really have a lower success rate in the native situation.
Right. And so the other part of that, like Em said, is that, you know, if you have 50 seeds that are in there, only some will germinate. But if, say, all 50 were to germinate and you broke it up into 4 quadrants, and so now you have, you know, whatever that is, I don't know, 12 seeds in each, 12 little plants in each quadrant, right? And you plant that out, you're either going to get like a nice chunky plant, or some of those will die off because they're overcrowded, and that's okay. And those stronger ones will take off. You know, the plant, like we said before, they're super intelligent. They know what to do. This is exactly what happens in nature. You know, you're going to have these super tiny seeds that's just going to fall to the ground. They're not like some of those seeds that are on a piece of fluff and they're going to float, right? Those seeds that are going to float, they can land in all different places. That's how they transport themselves. But these really tiny ones, they just fall right nearby to their base, their mother plant. So they know what to do. So just move them out as a hunk of seedlings and you should be good.
Jenny, do you have a question?
So it's sort of a question, sort of a comment. So in the past, when I have tried a method similar to this, I have basically taken like a large salad container like this, and I've put my containers in them, and I would kind of just, Mom, I have young kids, I can't always get out there to water like every day in the, you know, once they're germinating and once we're getting into warmer weather. And so I'll make sure that there's a little bit of water in the bottom so that I don't necessarily have to water from the top as much. Do you have any, you know, commentary on what you think of that method? The only pitfall I will say is if we get a really heavy rainstorm and there's an inch of rain, I have to make sure I dump the containers so the pots are not sitting in a ton of water. But other than that, like, I think it works pretty well, but I would be interested to hear your, you know, comment about that.
I think that can be great, Jenny. I just, as you mentioned, I'm always concerned that, there'll be too much water sitting in there, and then you have your roots rotting because there might be too much water and there's no way for them to drain. So, it just depends on, like, you have to be realistic about what you personally are going to put into this. If you feel like, okay, I can put them into this container and I can remember to go out and empty it if it rains, or when you water it, you have to be aware that you don't want a lot of water sitting in the bottom of that larger container, because then, your roots, it's just too wet for them. So that's why I like to leave them on the ground, because you still have the moisture from the ground below, and they'll drain. I worry more about them not draining, but again, like, you have to recognize where you're going to put them too. If you're I put mine, like I said, under a tree so that I know that there's dappled light, and that helps to regulate the temperature in those jugs. I know that, later in the season, I might need to water those daily if I keep them in there for a good long time, which sometimes I do because I have a lot of jugs and I can't get to planting everything out at once. So some of them might sit there for a while. I've actually had plants flowering in my jugs. I mean, they're wide open, but they're sitting out in my garden, flowering in the jug because I hadn't gotten them planted yet. But I was making sure that I was watering them regularly, so they hadn't dried out. And there's enough soil in there to support that. So that is okay. So, I mean, you just have to be realistic about what works for you and what you're going to do to maintain.
Right, and to circle back to all the gardeners, and whether you're a newbie or you're a seasoned expert, there's a huge range of how we can do this. And some of the people who attended the garden workshop last year took every little seedling and put them into plugs and grew but it was a lot of work. So there's a lot of different ways that we can approach these native seedlings. And this is just one. This is like the gateway, easy, put them in a milk jug, tape it up, sit it outside, hope for success approach. There's a lot more information out there as to if you want to go deeper into growing and sustain, and the success rate of the germination of your seeds, you can really go farther in terms of your knowledge. And Freddie's going to send out more information. And yeah, many of our people on this, I know people who they're here, there's a lot of information out there that we can go further into the science, but really some soil, milk jug, some tape, stick it outside. It's a good COVID approach to gardening in the winter. It's my approach.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I used to work on vegetable farms, and we always had greenhouses where we would start our seedlings. So when I stopped farming and was just gardening, vegetable gardening, I was starting seedlings under grow lights with minimal success, as I had really small kids and I was juggling a lot. So I didn't have a lot of success with that. But what I have had a lot of success with is the milk jugs, honestly. So this is one way that I would start a lot of seedlings. I still do start a lot of seedlings in the jugs for my yard. And as I learned about the native plants, I started doing the native plants and have had, really super success with everything I've started in them. So, I mean, you saw that there was a photo of the blue lobelia that Freddie showed. That was the one that I started last winter, and it flowered, that last fall. So, or one winter ago, and then the following fall it flowered. So it was, within a year I had this beautiful flowering plant. So it's pretty rewarding.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I have a few comments once everyone's done with questions, because
Sure, I think Aphrodite has a question.
Yes,
Right.
I do have a question. Let's say everything goes well and we have a beautiful flowers and wow, happy, okay. So next year we need to do the same thing again, or these flowers, they will produce, of course, they're gonna produce seeds and the seeds are gonna fall down and I'm gonna bring more, or I do need to do it every year?
I think everything that was given were perennial, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So here's the
So they
thing.
should come back.
They will come back, but you're going to be doing this every year until your yard is so full with pollinator flowers, you won't know what to do. And then you're going to do it some more and give it to your friends. And then you're going to do it some more because you're going to just love doing it. And, you know, but these plants will come back and you will have them, you know, for many years. You know, sometimes plants don't live forever, but we hope, depending on the interest, that we can do this next year and the year after. The interest certainly is growing. And some of that might be that people want to be doing gardening and other things during this COVID time. But we've had really encouraged by the number of people who signed up for this and were excited about it and really want to be involved in it. Were there more questions here? I didn't want to stop this conversation, but I do have some.
Beth has a
I see
question.
people raising their hands.
So I think that Aphrodite was also asking about if she needs to, so let's say that she has flowering seeds from the plant that she produced, if she needs to grow them inside the jug again. Some of them that fall into the garden, depending how, you know, if you use mulch or not, they will produce seedlings that you don't, you know, you just leave them there, and then in a couple of years you have more plants, for sure.
Thank you.
And Aphrodite, so you could choose to let your seeds scatter. You could choose to collect some of them. You can leave them some for the birds, because a lot of these seeds also are food for birds, and make a decision on what you do. But many of the, actually all of them, well, sorry, I can't say all of them. Some of them they'll either be a clump of a perennial that will expand, or some like the Monarda, they do expand as a perennial, but then they also seed themselves. So each plant behaves a little differently. I don't know what plants you got, but what you chose. And then you have more to share with your friends. If you do have a milk seed project next year, you can grow more and then give more plants away. But each plant behaves a little bit differently in terms of how they expand. Yeah.
I would love this year. I will make a much more concerted effort because I do collect seeds from my plants. So this year I'll try to make a more concerted effort to maybe make short videos when I do that, so that people can see what stage certain plants are at when they're ready to the seeds are ready to harvest. And then those are things that people can be sharing with each other on the great Facebook site that Freddie created. We'd also love to see, you know, your germinating plants, and we would love to see your plants flowering, and we'd love to see, you know, the pollinators visiting those plants. So, you know, the Facebook site is so great for that. And I think like it also helps other people to see like, oh, that's what this plant is going to look like, or, oh, okay, I need to be looking for this or that. So, you know, the more information we all share with each other, the better we can all learn. I just know it's been so great for me to learn so much just by seeing other people's experiences. So please feel free.
And I wanted to comment on that. I know not everyone does Facebook or likes it or wants to use it, and we're trying to find ways to communicate with people who are not on Facebook. But for some people who say they don't do Facebook or they don't use it, but they still have an account, if you try this, you know, just go to the group and see what's happening. And we have a couple of really fun things, which is Flower Friday, where we ask people to post their pictures of their flower. And it, you know, other people will talk about it, or just to, you know, it's kind of like, look what I did, just like Martha did with her milkweed, and look what happened. She got a butterfly and a caterpillar. And then also we have what's called Winged Wednesday. So, because you might as well have 2 name days. And Winged Wednesday is about, you know, birds or butterflies, anyone using one of the native plants, and native pollinators, native birds, not the non-native European honeybee. That's another talk. But then somebody this year made up, well, you need to have a seed Sunday. And I was like, well, is that Seedy Sunday? And we decided to call it Sunday Seeds. And that was a lot about getting ready for this workshop and also learning that in the winter, your winter garden is gorgeous once you start to appreciate. We leave the seed heads on it for the birds. And that's a whole nother flowering, beautiful arrangement. And there's this saying I just learned, brown is a color. And when you start to appreciate all the different hues, and sometimes the sun will hit it and it will be golden, like exploding, and and it's just what normally you would have cut off and put away. So this is also about gaining appreciation. And I encourage you to join the Facebook group, but I will be sending an email out and we'll try to find ways to communicate with people. I wanted to ask that what you also said, Nikki, about doing videos, that's one of the things we're thinking about. There were so many topics I wanted to hit in that first little bit I was going over, and that are, we used to do the Open Space Commission, and we will again, would host library presentations. We did a few a year. We'd have guest speakers come in, and those are great. But if you can't go, not everyone really wants to watch an hour and a half video after the fact. So maybe shorter videos. I started practicing a few at the Ecology Research Garden at Breakneck Hill. And the comments I got back is like, well, Freddie, that's a great picture of your sneaker, and maybe you need a helper, or, these sorts of things, or, I'd have the camera one place and the seeds somewhere else. So we're learning as we go, but we're trying to communicate and share, because what I didn't talk about at the beginning, why this is so important, is that.
Can I pause you for a second? Melissa, can
Yep.
we make it whoever's speaking is the spotlight?
You can't,
Here,
can't
I'll
see
just
me.
remove the spotlight from my milk jug right now.
Because the milk jug is amazing, but I would like
Thanks. I know it's not super exciting.
It's
to
a
watch.
really amazing milk jug. Sorry, Freddie, go ahead.
You're just going to see my phone.
That's fine, but no, we can all see each other without just a milk jug
Okay.
in front of us.
Okay. So, yeah, it's nice to, I'm actually looking at everyone. So I feel like one of the things we were trying to do with this group is to make it like community. When we had the workshop last year, the two of them, they were so much fun. It was like an old-fashioned quilting bee, and everyone was talking and laughing and having a great time. So we're trying to do that on Zoom here. And I will say this has been so challenging, and that group of volunteers I posted before, they deserve, if you can all clap now, because they worked, this has been going on since last, end of August, September. We had to collect the seeds and doing social distancing and putting together the packaging that we're still engaged in, because we want to make sure anyone who wants these seeds can have them. And here's the reason why. Read Doug Tallamy's book. We are in a crisis, and what's happening with insects impacts us. It's not just the insects. They're not something different. They're crashing, and I don't have the statistics in front of me, but significant crash. One of the other things why we're growing plants, we're growing them to be eaten. In the past, when you saw holes in your plants and your garden plants, people wanted to spray and kill whatever that was. Now when you see something eating your plants, you're going to look at it and yell, yippee, good, great going. That means something is reproducing and growing. And our biggest disconnect is birds eat insects. We've lost 30% of our common backyard birds in like the last 50 years. That's not sustainable. Even seed-eating birds feed their babies caterpillars. So when we grow plants for pollinators, particularly for butterflies, we're growing them they don't have a great survival rate from egg to butterfly. And the reason for that is a lot of them are food, and that is a wonderful thing. So we can love our caterpillars, but if the birds need them, that's wonderful too. And here's something you don't think of. A little chickadee needs 6,000 to 7,000 caterpillars to raise a clutch of chicks. That's a small chickadee. If you look around your yard, if you're not growing 6,000 to 7,000 caterpillars, there's no chickadees in your yard. And, you know, it goes on and on. That's the Doug Tallamy talk, but I just am passionate about it because we are saving biodiversity. And earlier in the conversation, I think it was Lawrence, you asked what about other pollinators. That's another talk, but working with Dr. G. Gear, we have a plant list. All of the seeds you got are for beautiful flowering plants. We want to attract you that way. But they're also, each and every one of them, a significant plant for an at-risk species of pollinator. And mostly we started focusing on the bumblebee. And if you don't know this, Southborough is doing magnificent work, working with Dr. G. Gear that is critical, cutting edge research. And we're the benefit of it now because we now have these plants that we planted at Breakneck Hill. The at-risk bumblebee, which the state in the prior report said was extirpated from the state, was gone. And we're like, well, we have it at Breakneck Hill, so it's not quite gone. And we're keeping it there. And now you're growing plants that can help this bumblebee. And we'll have another talk on that.
I wanted to ask if all the plants should, if people should expect flowers from the baby plants, or is that just like a happy thing the first year? And the second year is more prolific with the flowers. Because
some of the plants may see flowers the first year, but some will take till the second year.
Right. Some people might get a little frustrated and not realize that the baby plants don't always get flowers. So I just wanted, to ask that question.
No, that's a great point, Beth. Yeah. So also be patient because you may not get blossoms the first year. That doesn't mean they're not coming, but they may need to have 2 years before they flower. They just may need to establish a stronger root system. Some plants don't flower their first year ever. And that's the nature of certain plants. So be patient. It doesn't mean you failed. Nature is intelligent. It knows what to do. We're just there to help. Does anybody else have any questions? Is there anything in the chat, Emily?
The chat wasn't really open for everybody to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay. It wasn't you. It's just not.
Okay.
It's kind of only.
Yeah, I think when everyone
host.
moved over to panelists because they're not an attendee, then they don't chat anymore, so they can just unmute themselves.
Oh, okay,
No.
super.
Yeah, if anyone wants to unmute themselves. Yeah. We can all make videos of milk jugs and winter sowing and make it go viral. Sorry, I got interrupted. I was not interrupted until the very last minute when I had something to say. So I think Freddie and Nikki have done a great job. All of the seeds that were collected were wild seeds. So they have not been processed in the same way that you would buy seeds. So there's maybe a disclaimer on the germination rate.
Also, if anybody has questions going forward, I'm happy to try to field those for you as you go. I think the best way to reach, again, is probably that Facebook group. If you want to put your questions on there, I can, keep in there regularly, or, tag me in it. My name's Nikki Howell on Facebook, so you can tag me in the post and I can help you to, problem solve along the way.
It's Native Plant Gardens of Southborough.
Freddie, we can see your screen share right now. Did you have something you wanted to say about it?
You had muted your phone, so you have to do *6 too if you want to come off of that.
Hi, I'm just trying to get this into the slideshow. From beginning.
But does
Okay.
anybody on the call have any questions, I guess, that Nikki can address, or?
All right, is this screen showing?
It is.
So I just wanted to point out, this is the native plant garden of Joyce. Are you here, Joyce? Can you unmute?
She has to unmute.
Okay,
Yes,
so
I'm here. That's my New York ironweed and my Joe Pye weed along my gravel pathway. Yeah.
And this shows how beautiful native plant gardens can be. So many people think they have to be more of a messy meadow look. And this is really a formal cottage garden type. Jenny Pete also has one. They're becoming more and more in town. We want you to grow these gardens, and we're going to, the Open Space Commission wants to start to map these as part of our pollination preservation area. We're calling it a little different because it's not just a pathway. We're preserving pollinators and the whole pollination system. And we have a garden tour. Last year we couldn't have it, so we're hoping to have one again this year. And we're hoping with all these plants that there'll be lots more gardens to join us. This is another picture of her yard. Her lawn area is getting smaller. Can you see? I don't know if over here, I think these are newer beds. We like to say when you look at your lawn, think scatter rugs, not wall-to-wall carpeting. You know, find out what areas you need a lawn. You do need some to, you know, for the dog to catch the ball, or your kids to roll around, or to play croquet, whatever. But you can still have a lot of native plants in here. And I want to show you what also can happen in this last picture. You see this? I'm laughing. You see this back here? Joyce goes, oh, I didn't mean to send you the picture with the, oh, sorry, that went too far. Let me start. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say I'm sorry. I'll get to it. Slideshow from beginning. All right. Over here, the backhoe. Well, Joyce had somebody come in and help clean out some more areas so she'd have more land to plant. And if you don't think that's kind of funny, it can happen to you too. And there were a lot of invasives there. So she's really going to have something for you to see next year. And then the final picture here is one of our seed sorters, Helper. And this is fun and great fun for all ages. Everyone can get involved. And he's been one of the best helpers we've had. He's planted plants at Breakneck Hill, and here he is sorting seeds. And you saw him really early when he could barely walk, dressed up as a bumblebee in the parade. So that's sort of what I wanted to leave us all on, a very feel-good, you know, very encouraging.
Before we cut off the meeting, Freddie, can we let people just chit chat or make friends? I don't know how this works. Can we just all? I'm
going to stop sharing. I think that would be great. We're going to try it for whatever.
High five, and then if anybody wants to talk for a few minutes. I don't know how you are.
I'd love to say thank you to Leonardo. We've never met, but I have so many plants that have come from your yard that are now in my yard, or seeds that came from your yard that are now growing in my yard. So even though we haven't met, we're both in Worcester, and I have a lot of your baby plants doing really well. So thank you for sharing, Leonardo.
Well, you're welcome. That's awesome. Well, you should come over in the spring, you know, and we can visit each other's gardens.
I would love that.
Actually, Freddie talked about a garden tour. Maybe we could do that. We could do it one in Worcester, and you know, I could have people over. I'm not sure if you're willing to do that too, but we can, you know, hopefully COVID, we're going to be all vaccinated, and we can actually go in each other's car and drive to Worcester.
I would love to
between
do
Leonardo's
that.
garden and Nikki's garden, everybody needs to go to both places. So Worcester's the place to go.
It looks like Deborah has her hand up.
Yes, hi. Last spring, I promoted on the Facebook page that I have many shoots of elderberry plants coming up, and I've got large clumps and they go just so far and then I mow them down. But quite a few people came and took shoots of the elderberries. So there will be more. So, but you have to have a damp, somewhat moist soil, which I do. And I also have a lot of lobelia cardinalis, if anybody's interested. Again, a wetland, fairly wetland plant. Happy to share.
From my experience, the elderberry is a hardy New England plant that does it behaves differently in the wet versus the dry, but it can be moved from place to place, and you can actually cut the canes and the nubs grow roots, so you can put them in a bucket of water. So you can be one of the sources for elderberry very easily, because it's a very easy plant to propagate. Possibilities and a lot of cool plants you can put out there.
Yes, I think a before and after photo shot of the lawn. I think Jenny did that too, didn't you? Before and after.
Yes, I did. And I guess, and one thing that I would recommend to people who are kind of just getting started with this journey and or are new to gardening is pay attention to if you have areas that have standing water, or, you know, go outside and, you know, take a handful of soil and see if it, you know, stays like a little ball in your hand, so it's more clay, or if it's more sandy. And then another thing is, I have a lot of trees around the border of my yard, and you really don't realize how little sun you have until you actually go out and take pictures every hour. So like one day when you're just like sitting around, you know, doing chores around the house, you know, just run out and take a picture every hour or every 2 hours of the area you're thinking about putting in a garden, and you'll have a really good idea of how much sun you have, and that will help you kind of narrow down the different kinds of plants that you can use in that area. So.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't re-mention the fact that we have a new pollinator preservation habitat garden going in at the South Groveland Land Foundation Seals Preserve. And we will be putting a call out, not right yet, but once we know exactly when we need to start doing work there, for volunteers, and maybe if you have extra plants that they will go there to help populate that. And that's something that we're very excited about for the future, and you'll be hearing more about that. You know, you can participate in that as well. And the other thing I want to mention is these plants that are part of Dr. Degere's plant list. It's a very precise way of looking at which plants to use, because we're trying to save the species that are headed towards extinction. And when you do that, you're also helping lots of other pollinators as well. But when you use the plants that help the other pollinators and not these pollinators, these ones are more likely to disappear. So as you saw, the milkweed, which helps the monarch, but isn't one of the listed at-risk species we're working for. So there's lots of benefit to many, many pollinators by focusing on the ones that are most at risk. Sort of like saving the drowning kid, and you save, you know, all the future generations. So that's just another, we'll have more talks about that too.
I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Freddie, because I know you've organized all this, you've done so much, you've gotten seeds in all our hands. For me, you've just been a great resource for learning so much and getting me so excited about this. So thank you so much for all your hard work.
Yeah, and the community organization, I would also like to thank you for that. Just pulling all of us together. on different platforms and going through the headaches of platforms that we don't control, like Eventbrite, to really pull people together, to distribute seeds, to facilitate a good conversation and make something happen. I'm very grateful that we have a community a year ago at the library and here now COVID online. So I thank you very much.
Well, I will say you're welcome.
You know,
And
we
it
get all
does my heart.
clapping. We get all like, you know, we get all like.
I see the clapping and the smiling. And I just want to say, I am honored to be able to work with you because, you know, it's exciting and fun. And when we did the drive-through seed pickup, there were people coming through saying they were so excited to be doing this. And, you know, they may not all be here tonight. We had like 80 people total. And, you know, hopefully a lot of those seeds are going to be planted. There are a lot of people getting involved in the Facebook, and, you know, our numbers shot up recently. You know, that's not our goal, but it means they're getting the information. And one of the sayings we have now is, well, not one of the, but it's our newer one, and I'll be using it a lot. It's, we're not just planting gardens, we're growing community. And that's us all together. And I'm getting weepy, but, and I'm not a weepy person, you guys, if you heard me earlier. But, you know, it's so important, you know, it's so important what we're doing, and everyone, you know, and it's fun. Oh, that's the other thing. Did I mention fun? Did you see the pictures of, you know, people are having fun? And what's better, saving the planet and having fun at the same time, and a beautiful yard, beautiful garden, and wonderful people. Really, we don't have a lot in common. That was one of the interesting things. These are people who normally would not have been hanging out together. And we did, and we really join us because you too can be part of this bigger, really fun, exciting. And you don't have to come to all the events, but I'm sure you'll have fun. That's the end for me. And I'll let anyone else have something to say. And and Harley, can you hear him? He's saying good night, everyone.
Harley's saying good night. We can all say good night. Thank you, Freddie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks, Nikki.
You're welcome.